Hey guys, today we're gonna go over my June TBR. Full disclosure, I am getting over a bout of COVID at the moment, so if I sound a little hoarse or stuffed up or spacey, that is why. I am feeling a lot better now though, so let's dive into this. This is going to be kind of a different sort of TBR. I do have a couple physical books on hand that I would like to get to this month, but I'm also really behind on my NetGalley reviews, so I want to try to get to some of those this month as well. And if you don't know, NetGalley is a website where you can request advanced reader copies from the publishers, and you can send them to your Kindle and stuff. And so that's how I've been reading them. So it's a really awesome way to be able to read books before they're published, but you have to write a review for them as well. So your sort of feedback ratio also affects the books that you get approved to review. So if you want to read some of the really big releases and get approved for them, you have to have a pretty good review rating or feedback rating. And I think mine's sitting at about 50% right now. Let's get through some of the physical books I want to read first this month. And then I will also let you know some of the arcs I plan on reading. I didn't really have like a particular sort of theme for like what I wanted to read this month. I have a couple like maybe kind of summery vibe ones, and then there's just a couple that I've been wanting to get to for a really long time. So starting off, I have Beasts of Prey by Ayanna Gray. This I believe came out last year. This is a Fairy Loot exclusive paperback, so the colorway is a little bit different than the traditionally published version. But I've been really excited to read this ever since we got it in our Fairy Loot box. It follows like a zoo of mythical creatures, and we follow a character who works as a beast keeper. The main character mistakenly unleashes a wild and mysterious power that sends the night zoo up in flames. And we also follow a character who is destined to become a warrior until the fire at the night zoo throws his destiny into disaster and he's cast out forever. And they must work together to capture a legendary monster that has plagued their country. It just sounds like a really fun read. I don't know. I love like the idea of like a zoo full of mythical creatures and stuff. There's like a jungle setting, so I figured that would be kind of fun for spring and summer. I've heard really good things, and the sequel comes out soon, so I believe this is a duology, so it would be fun to finish this and then pick up the second one when it comes out and read that as well. So really looking forward to this one. Next up, we have another Fairy Loot edition of The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axio. This is also just giving me kind of summery warm weather vibes because of the ocean, but I've heard this is kind of reminiscent of like Spirited Away mixed with Korean folklore, so I think that's really cool. It has these beautiful sprayed edges. I love the dragon. And this one we follow a young woman who lives in a land that is ravaged by storms from the sea, and to appease the sea god, the people who live here sacrifice a young woman to be like the sea god's bride, but he hasn't been satisfied with any of them, and the woman who's destined to become the next sacrifice is the main character's brother's girlfriend, basically. In order to save her brother's happiness, the main character steps forward and sacrifices herself instead, and she finds herself in this underwater spiritual realm, but as a human, she can't live there very long. So she has to kind of figure out the mystery of what's upsetting this sea god in a rather timely manner. So I'm really excited for this. This is a standalone, I checked, and I'm really excited to read this. I know Axio wrote a sort of K-pop-y inspired book like a year or two ago called XOXO, so I haven't read that one, but I am curious to see what her take on sort of more of a fantasy story is. This looks a lot of fun, and I've heard good things, and I like a good fantasy standalone sometimes as well, and I think this will be a really fun sort of one and done book to pick up this month. Next up, we have the book that is sort of next up on my list for my Goodreads want to read backlog. If you don't know, I've been trying to go through the books that have been on my want to read list on Goodreads the longest and kind of clear that up so I'm not holding on to books and not reading them for a really long time. Next up for that is Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I love this author. Everything I read by her so far has just been like so magical and beautiful, and she's so good at writing like different genres. Like, and I think that's really hard to do for an author. Like, she's not writing the same story over and over by any means. And this one sounds so cool. It takes place in the 20s in Mexico City, and our main character accidentally awakens the Mayan god of death. She's sort of sent on this adventure, and it just sounds so cool. Like, I don't think I've ever read anything set in Mexico during the Jazz Age. It's just not like a common setting for those kind of stories, at least like in what I've read. I'm not speaking for a whole like time period or anything, but this sounds really cool, and I love how Sylvia Moreno Garcia handles fantastical elements, and I just think this sounds like a really fun adventure story. I believe there's also a bit of a slow burn romance, maybe. We shall see. And yeah, another sort of standalone magical realism fantasy story, and I've been wanting to get to this one for so long. I just keep getting distracted by some of her more recent releases. So I'm very much looking forward to picking this one up finally. And last up on the physical TBR, we have Brandon Sanderson's Warbreaker. I keep buying Brandon Sanderson books and I still haven't read one yet. So this is sort of the most recent entry into that. But I really wanted to start here. Like, I've kind of contemplated where I wanted to dip my toes in first with Brandon Sanderson, and I've gone back and forth on like, oh, I should do Mistborn, oh, I should do Skyward, but I think I've finally landed on Warbreaker. I believe at the moment this is a standalone. I have heard he does have plans to write a second novel at some point, but that man has so many series going on. Not sure when to expect that, but I'm pretty sure this does read as a standalone. This is like a completed story. I think given that he has so many series, a standalone is a good place to start. I've also heard this is his most, I don't want to say romantic, but like his story that has the most romantic elements in it. And I really like a good romance in my fantasy novels. So that appeals to me a lot as well. And a podcast that I listen to called Book Reviews Kills. The hosts, Evan and Chad, are going to be reading this book as like a read along soon, and so I want to be able to listen to those episodes and know what they're talking about without being spoiled. So sort of an additional reason for me to read this book sooner rather than later. So yeah, I'm not totally sure exactly what this is about. So at the center of the story, we follow two sisters who are princesses, a god king that one of them has to marry, a lesser god who doesn't like his job, and an immortal who's still trying to undo the mistakes he made hundreds of years ago. So kind of vague, but I'm intrigued. I do believe this is also part of Brandon Sanderson's larger like Cosmere universe, but I don't think there's like a particular reading order for that. So this is where I feel comfortable starting with Brando Sando, and I'm really excited for it. So I can't wait to find out finally what all the hype with him is about. And now on to some of the arcs I want to read this month. So first up we have This Vicious Grace by Emily Theed. This is actually an audiobook arc that I was approved for, which I haven't really requested any of those because I don't know. I like audiobooks, but I'm very sort of moody with them. Like I have to be in the right headspace to commit to just an audio. And typically when I am listening to an audiobook, I do also have a physical version to kind of jump back and forth between, because audiobooks are great for when like you're driving or doing chores, but like I'm not just going to sit on the couch and listen to an audiobook. I have to be doing something. So this has been kind of interesting. I have started this one, but again, where I'm only listening to it on audio, it's taking me a little bit of time. This is actually a really fun fantasy story. I believe it's YA, and it's inspired by, or there's a lot of Italian cultural influences, which is fun. And I really like listening to the narrator read certain parts of the Italian, like her accent's really great. And our main character, Alessa, is sort of a chosen one. She is known as the Fenestra on her island country home, and she has the power to amplify basically other people's magic. And every generation or so, there's sort of this doomsday event that plagues their land. And as the Fenestra, her and her chosen partner are meant to help defend their island. But the last three partners that she's chosen, she's accidentally killed. The clock is kind of ticking on when this doomsday event is going to happen again, and she's feeling a lot of pressure to perform her duties and stop killing innocent people, basically on accident. And she ends up hiring a bodyguard named Dante, because people have tried to assassinate her for being a bad Fenestra, and I believe her and Dante end up falling in love. And this is kind of a fun, not even grumpy sunshine, because I wouldn't necessarily call Alessa sunshine, but Dante is definitely very grumpy. It's a curmudgeonly bodyguard situation, and I love that. So that's been a lot of fun, and definitely want to finish that up in June. Then we have For the Throne by Hannah Witten. This is the sequel and final book in a duology, the first book being For the Wolf. And in this story, we follow sisters Red and Neve, and they're the first and second daughters in this kingdom. The first daughter, Neve, is destined to be queen. She is for the throne. And the second daughter, Red, is to be sacrificed to the Wilderwood, which is like a cursed woods that sort of borders their lands and demands a sacrifice. And no one really knows what this sacrifice means or like what happens to the second daughters exactly until we follow Red in her story, which is the first one. I can't really go into too much detail about what the second one is about because it picks up like right where the first one leaves off, and so there'd be a lot of spoilers there, but this is a really fun, the first one was definitely more of like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I'm not really quite sure what to expect with this next one, other than that we follow Neve a little bit more closely, as she is the daughter that is for the throne, which is what the title of this one is. Her story's been really interesting so far, and I really like the sisterhood element that we follow in this one, and just how much these two are willing to do for each other, even though like they have their sort of predestined paths. They just fight for each other so hard, and it's beautiful. The first book also has a slow burn romance that I was super invested in, and I'm not quite sure what direction we're going with the second one with Neve, but I'm intrigued. So really excited for this one, and I was thrilled to be approved for an arc for this. I believe it comes out in June, like early June, so I do want to try to read it before its publication date. What a concept. But yeah, so definitely getting to that one this month. Next up, we have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. She wrote the storied life of A.J. Fikry, which I know is a really big book. She also wrote a book that I read in middle school called Elsewhere, which kind of scarred me for life, but like I remember it so vividly, like it stuck with me for years. So when I saw that she was coming out with another book, I was really excited to pick it up, and very excited that I got approved for an arc. So this story is I don't even know, like it follows these two characters throughout their lives, never lovers but often in love, and it seems like a friends to lovers situation, and they become creative partners in the world of video game design. I don't know much about it beyond that because I was like, I'm sold. That sounds really interesting. So the story spans 30 years from Cambridge to Venice Beach as we follow these characters who grow up together and create this really successful game together, and I believe have a fallout and then reconnect. And I really love those kind of stories. It kind of gives me Love in Other Words vibes a little bit. Not exactly by any means, but I don't know, the video game element seemed really cool, and I'm really excited to see where the story goes. I don't know, it seems beautiful, so I'm really excited for that. Also, I really love the cover. I think like it's summery, but also like gamey. I don't know, it's hard to describe. I just really like the vibe. So yeah, very excited for that one, and that one publishes on July 5th, so I need to get to that one as well. And finally this month, I'd love to get to The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. This is actually technically already out, so I am behind on reviewing this one. And I believe Fairy Loot is doing this for their June YA box. And it hasn't been sent yet, but it should be soon. So I'm really curious to see what their customizations for it are going to be. And it's a book inspired by 1001 Nights. I don't really know to like the extent of, but I know we follow a smuggler and a cowardly prince and a djinn, and it seems like a really fun adventure story. It's inspired by, ancient Arabia, which is always fun. They're dealing with like a cursed land, and they have to go on this quest to find an ancient lamp that has the power to revive the barren land at the cost of sacrificing all the djinn. But I believe the main character's companion is a djinn, so This sounds really interesting. I've been following Chelsea Abdullah on Instagram for a while, ever since I found out about this book, and she's posted really cool like character artwork and snippets from the book and stuff. So I'm really excited to read this one. It sounds like a lot of fun. It reminds me a little bit of We Hunt the Flame, but I think this is kind of more of like a fuller ensemble story. So I'm excited to see how this one goes and to finally write a review for it. All right, and that wraps up all the books that I hope to get to this June. That is not nearly all the books that I have on my NetGalley list, but I'm trying to keep this somewhat reasonable. And as it is, I think it's already unreasonable. So we'll see what I get to. I'm genuinely excited for all of these books, and if everything goes well, hopefully I'll actually get to them all. We shall see. COVID has sort of derailed my reading in the last week or so, so I really want to kind of dive back into it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to comment down below which of these books should I read first. Let me know what you're reading this month. I would love to see what you're excited about, and if you have any suggestions for me, I'd love to hear them. So thank you guys again for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, have a lovely day. Bye.